Welcome to the Let's Go Recovery podcast, where we investigate sobriety and beyond that, explore solutions to help us heal at the core, where the root of our problems like addiction or alcoholism begin. We hope you hear something in today's podcast that ignites a change in your life.
Oftentimes in recovery, you hear me talk about the fact that alcohol and drugs are not the actual problem. It's the trauma, it's the hurt, it's the anger, it's the fears that come into our lives. Today, we're going to approach it from a little bit different angle. I have a special guest that I'm excited to have on the show. Jahnay the Artist is in studio, and I saw her at a concert recently, and her message was powerful, and I couldn't wait to get her on. So help me welcome to this show, Jahnay the Artist.
Yo, what's up?
I'm so glad you're here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
I talked about you're a musician, and I talked about your music being raw, authentic, that powerful stuff. But I want to start off by getting into a little bit of your journey. Like, what powers you? What are you about? And share that with our audience, because I think they're going to be impacted and influenced by that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm definitely empowered by, I've gone through a lot of mental health struggles and whatnot, and a lot of childhood trauma. And I think for me, I feel I've been gifted with these abilities to make good music. And so what really powers me is taking those situations that I've gone through and being able to, just share it with others, right? I feel like our responsibility almost as artists is to be able to take the situations that have been going on in our lives and not only convey them for ourselves, but convey them to people that don't have those talents, right? Like, if you think about like in history, I'm not really the most inclined to pick up a book or read a journal about the times that went back, but I am very inclined to like read poetry or listen to a song and whatnot. And so I keep that thought process in mind as I'm like hitting my journey, just because I do feel like when I'm gifted with this talent, I am able to take the trauma, the BPD that I deal with in my daily life, which is borderline personality, and just convey like real life shit to people that are going through it that might not have the same tools that I do to convey that message.
I love that. I think there's so many different ways that we can interact with not just the public, but with ourselves. I think there's something powerful. We talk a lot about in recovery, putting pen to paper, writing some stuff down, and you're doing it in a way that's not just kind of, I'm going to use the word selfish. It's not just for you. You're actually talking to that young lady or man that's struggling with some of the same things that you're struggling with. Our struggles are different. Me and you come from different places,
literally,
but what we reach for might be the same.
Right. Or some of the, like, even though the journey might not be the same, I think there's some like trials that may be similar, right? Where at least someone can take a bite off of me dealing with like financial issues and wanting to talk about that. And it might not be exactly like what they are going through, but the message is still the same, right? It's still, yes, I'm acknowledging the situation that I'm in, and sometimes it sucks, but I'm not going to let this like take me down type of mentality.
I love that.
Thank
I love
you.
that. So tell me a little bit currently, and I know a little bit about just, stalked you on social media, as we already shared on the show.
Well,
I did a little searching.
Okay.
Some of this, so let's get into the weight loss stuff. The stuff where you talked about getting into a place of depression. I often tell people that might be a slot machine. That might be a bowl of ice cream. That can be a person that we reach for. Whatever that is, when I'm frustrated, angry, that is my addiction, right? And it can change.
Sometimes, and that's the thing we have to be careful with, right? When in general, things can be addictive, but when you also realize you have an addictive personality, it's a very slippery slope, I feel, to make sure that I'm not like jumping from one thing to another, right? Like that you're just passing on your addiction. And so right now I'm having very brutal and very honest conversations, not only with myself, but for my following, talking about like in society right now, I think there's a disagreement between like what actually like fat positive really means. And I've seen it kind of been overthrown where it's accepting, yes, you're plus size or fat, but not making changes to do anything about it. And why I think what I've noticed is I think that people are afraid to like be very honest with themselves, right? Like we can all love the way that we look. We can love where we're at. But there is a point where things become unhealthy. And I have found myself like resparking, just being, I was isolated in Utah for like 10 months, and I just found myself resparking a binge eating habit that I had and coming out with the song Fat. And I found it being the perfect opportunity to start breaking down those barriers, not only for the people that are here with me, but for the people that might not understand what some of the factors of obesity are, because it's not just being lazy, you know. And I think over like talking about it and being vulnerable and breaking down my own weight loss journey and talking about the downfalls, the binges, the economical like effects that have like impacted me in my life to overcome those. I'm getting pretty good feedback thus far. And I'm realizing that a lot of people are dealing with like the binge eating era right now. I don't want to call it an era for fun, but an era.
Sure. I like it.
Yeah, they're dealing with it. And I don't feel like we talk about it openly enough, because with certain substances, it's like, okay, well, these are addictive, and we know that, and we experience it, and we can try our best to stay away from them. But food, you have to eat food. And so it's a constant battle, especially when you're dealing with the food addiction, to like figure out what moderation really means and what it looks like. And that's where I'm like trying to break down those barriers right now, because I think that in this situation that I'm in with what I'm making, I can hopefully bridge the gap between those that are, you know, fit and may not understand what it is to be plus size, and those are plus size that are a little hesitant to break down those barriers within themselves, because it's painful truths, right? We don't want to admit, you know, we're in this situation all the time, and I think that's with anything, right? We don't want to admit, like, you know, sometimes our actions, even though if they're not, could be non-intentional or based out of something that could have been out of hurt, like trauma, sometimes it's hard to like break down those barriers and whatnot. And so I'm using myself as a sacrificial lamb to do that, and I'm excited for the journey.
I'll tell you what, as far as I can tell, you're doing a hell of a job, because I know that standing and talking and that honesty you talked about is absolutely difficult for most people. We talk about it being the first step in recovery, just because that's the hardest thing. I can tell you that, hey, I'm good with where I'm at, but I go home and cry myself to sleep or shove some food in my body is the same as drugs and alcohol. I want to talk about the social acceptability of some of these type of, you know, I say meth and people are like, ah, but drinking a fifth of vodka is kind of not like, oh, that's fine, because that'd be the fine thing. When you talk about weight or eating disorders, that's the same sort of thing. We don't think of that as the detrimental part of our lives, but you know it. You go home and look in the mirror and you're sad. And then you talked about this spiraling effect of like financial impact. Like I eat, and it's not just your exercise or your health or your body. It's how I feel about myself. Now I don't start performing at work. Like I don't want to get out of bed. You talked a little bit about slipping into this kind of deeper depression. Like you didn't leave bed. Tell me a little bit about that, like kind of leading up to journey there, and where you found yourself and then knew that you were trapped. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I did. I made a video where I spoke that the last 11 months, I really truly felt like I hit rock bottom in a sense. And what ended up happening is I went through a lot of physical like health issues that prevented me from really doing much, like socially, physically, anything. And also I found myself in a financial situation where I ended up losing my home. I ended up losing everything that I owned. And it just took me in a spiral almost. It just snowballed and felt like everything was just hitting. But I was blessed enough to have a mother figure take me in. And when I got to Utah, I was chilling in the basement and I realized, like, you know, I'm bored, let me eat. You know, I'm feeling sad, let me eat. And, you know, excusing those behaviors to fulfill something that I was needing, which is connection, and which was, you know, maybe more activity and whatnot, that I resparked these habits. So I caught myself excusing it slowly until it just became me deep down in McDonald's not liking where I'm at, right? And we don't want to talk, you know, sometimes it's very hard to like look at yourself, not for me like physically, right, but look at myself like, dang, I'm really like gorging and I'm indulging in gluttony at this point, just simply because I have these voids that I'm trying to fill. And so for me, the switch was really like getting very spiritual and getting on my knees and just being very, very, very transparent about how I'm feeling and where I'm at. And this is something that I'm realizing has a bigger hold on me than I might need more help with. And so I just started breaking it down. I prayed and prayed and prayed. And I was lucky enough to find someone who was willing to like donate their time to be a trainer and to be a nutritionist for me. And so I'm on their program right now for the next few months. But yeah, it was a very small process that we have to be aware of, right? When we have addictive personalities, we have to be aware of those little stepping stones that could, that have potential to lead into a greater downfall. And that's kind of what happened in my case.
Yeah, I think that's obvious with any addict. I don't think anybody gets up in the morning and says, I can't wait until my car's getting repossessed, my home's getting foreclosed, my family's gone, and I'm living behind a dumpster. Nobody's saying that.
At all.
Like, how did I get here? And I'll tell you, for everybody, it started with putting a substance or a person or a behavior in front of you and it being like a warm blanket.
Yeah.
I talk about that, and that can be a Big Mac or it can be a bottle of vodka in my case. Like, that literally was that sort of thing. And then I go, how did I get here? Yeah. And it's this journey back to look at, and we're going to get into some of your stuff, like this taking me back and realizing where some of this began. How is that going for you? And what kind of, I don't want to say, not triggers, but what are some of the things that a person can look for that they can start realizing where these, come from? Where are these thoughts?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think one, checking in and journaling is super important because that's when you can be the most like transparent with yourself. But I think like for me, it was small stuff like, am I eating because I'm hungry or am I eating because I'm bored? Are my hands idle enough or very like super idle? Or am I just like, again, doing this out of habit, right? Repetition too. It's like sometimes I would just find myself in the height of it, just going to the kitchen, just to go to the kitchen, maybe finding, not even hungry, just this looks good. And also something to look out for that I've realized in my personal journey is the like obsessive thoughts of it. And I think that takes like putting other things in your time, right? Like even if it's service or something that could benefit others, because I would, and I still do, to be quite frank with you, when I fixate a lot on the food, and I have to realize like my mindset now is like the food it can be good and there can be a healthy relationship, but I'm not there yet. So for now, it's a means for survival, right? Rather than a means of like joy or comfort or whatnot. Because sometimes it's in the food world, it's easy to say that you're a foodie. Sure. And it's easy to fall into that trap. Like, yeah, I'm just a foodie. I'm just a foodie. Well, how many days out of the week can I be a foodie? You know what I mean? Right. Like, right. I'm a foodie 7 out of 356 days. Right. Well, I maybe I need to like start implementing this balance and whatnot. So I'm definitely not at a place where I'm like completely out of it, right? But I am in a space where I think people, especially when it comes to deeper things like trauma and economic factors, it may take additional help, right, to break down those sources of emptiness, right? Like, it took me, I barely just realized that one of the issues that I was doing was I would hoard food because I didn't think that I was going to have access to it later. And I'm not even in the same situation where I need to hoard food. I'm in a position where it's actually very safe, it's very healthy, very happy. But I realized a couple of weeks ago that I was genuinely buying a lot of food at one time from whatever fast food place that I would go to, leaving it, getting home, and like not eating it. I would just have in my possession. I would feel that safety for knowing that I'm going to have food for my next meal when I don't have to do that. Wow. Right? So it's these long-term effects that people really like need to start breaking down and breaking through to actually like overcome it, right? It's not as simple as like put me on a diet, we're good. No, it's like we need to dig into this nitty gritty of like some of the inconsistencies in your childhood and in early adulthood and whatnot, and really start tear this down. And I definitely recommend like a professional with guidance, because you can do as much as you can, but having that additional touch and having someone who knows what questions to ask you for you to start digging further, I think is super beneficial. And I'm very grateful to have like a team to do that with. And I know that everyone's not fortunate to do that, but YouTube, the internet is free. And people's experiences on there are also free, right? So it's a reason, it's a barrier, but it's not that big of a barrier to like start really digging and figuring out those things, because we are in a space right now where people's shared and lived experiences are so easily accessible to us. And so in one hand, the experience of the commonality is there, but also the person that's overcome it is just as accessible. And so I think that helps me a lot too, because I'm not ignorant to the fact that like mental health care is not as accessible as it should be to everyone, especially like in financial situations. But again, the internet is free, and breaking down it and even asking questions like on there. I hate to say it, but a place that I start, and I don't hold like weight to it, but it's just help me guide, is Reddit. You know, like I'm like, am I eating too much? Reddit, like, you know, and then it's like, okay, I can find resources and whatnot, and then I'm able to use my power to figure out like, are these resources beneficial to me, of course, but it was crazy. I started a group, Fat Girl Fitness, and I tried to get people, plus size women, to join my group. And we're in such a place of contention with this like body positivity movement right now that I was getting kicked out of the groups for wanting to have like develop a safe space where women could work out and to learn and to overcome these habits. But what I found is I was getting kicked out of these body positivity and fat acceptance groups under the guise of like promoting skinny and diet culture, when it's really, that was never my expectation, right? And so I realized I have a bigger like battle to like for commonality than I thought. It was definitely something I didn't expect. So I started going to weight loss groups, which is different, but the fat acceptance, there's like certain fat conventions that I tried to reach out to, and I mean, I knocked me off because
that's crazy.
It's insane.
How is it possible in your mind that we shift that mind? So I think you talked about something about the mind being really a detrimental tool. We start either whether it's fixating or thinking this about ourselves. Like, how do we turn that mind into a positive tool for us? Like, where do you think that begins for somebody, where they start thinking and believing about themselves the things that they should?
I mean, I think the first thing, right, and especially in a body sense, is to define what health means to you. Like, it doesn't have to be a one size fit all, and your journey doesn't have to be like X, Y, and Z down the street. You don't even have to strive to have a number, right? I think defining what that means to you, and also like being very kind and graceful with yourself, in the sense of this isn't a thing that changes instantly, right? These are small little things, starting with gratitude and small affirmations were things that help me. Like when I'm working out, one of the things that I started, because I don't feel like I'm to the level I'd like to be as far as working out, but I have weaknesses, and I'm constantly affirming myself. I am strong. I am healthy. Not because I feel that way in that moment, but I need to shift my thoughts to thinking those things about myself. So that way I'm not limiting myself innately because I'm like, I can't do X, Y, and Z because I am this size, right? So that's what the important part of the group in the community is because if once you start reshaping those thoughts, you start acting upon those things, right? It's like, I can't hike this mountain.
Not with that attitude, you can't.
I can, right?
Right.
I can.
Right.
And I'm going to try, and that's the thing, and that's why I wanted to start this group, is because I would go to workout classes and beginner classes, and I felt like they weren't beginner enough. And for me, I know that if I set my mind to something, especially like a hike or something, I will finish it. It might not be in the 10, 15, 20 minutes you're doing it, sure, but I'm going to work my ass off to do it. And so I think small changes like that, and also like finding how to serve yourself best in the things that serve you. So for me, that's art, right? Like in music and whatnot. And so I'm able to express my journey in the things that serve me. So if you're a reader, a writer, take that and really like use that as your tool to help you like find your own healing.
I love that.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you hit on a very important thing, that your journey is personal. Like, again, if it's drugs, alcohol, obesity, gambling, pornography, we have a huge problem right now in my mind with electronic addiction.
Oh,
I
for
just
sure.
saw a study yesterday that Arizona leads the country in time on the phone per day at 9 hours. We are average per person on our phone 9 hours a day. So you're getting fed a message,
Yeah.
right? That you've actually, I'm going to say, started because you looked at XYZ. Now they're going to, I'm a golfer. So you can't go on my phone and not find, golf. Like, I'm injured right now and I haven't been able to golf, but yet my phone is golf, golf, golf. And that could be buy something, go somewhere, or, whatever it is, you've started that process. So if you start looking again at something that isn't good for you, we're going to feed that to you again, right?
For sure.
And then your mind starts going, well, this is what I'm supposed to look like. This is how much I'm supposed to make. This is what type of car I'm supposed to drive, right? This is where everybody else is in life, right? You look around and all your friends are married. They got 2 kids, and here you are going, wait, I haven't arrived. And I go, you decide that. Yeah. You decide every single day what your day looks like, right? I mean, that's absolutely powerful.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, we have the ability to do that. And also, too, social media will give us these false, like, ideals of what, like, where we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to look like. And that's too, like, what my whole journey is like, I'm not focused necessarily on a number. It's the way I feel, right? Like, because I feel like I'm a little conceited. I love the way I look, right? But, like, I don't like the way that I feel right now, and that's where I'm like tapping in and whatnot. But back to the phone thing. I mean, that was one of the things that I felt like I had to do to change or start making change. One is, like, less screen time, but 2, I went in my every social media that I had and that I was wanting to be on, because it's a double-edged sword, like, posting on social media to, like, being on it, and I just unfollowed any account, everyone that made me feel a certain way about myself, even if I love their content. It was like, I just can't allow myself to continue to get into this hole of where I'm now, like, I love myself on the surface, but now I'm, like, self-deprecating and not appreciating the things that I have going on because I'm seeing what everyone else has. And I think, like, Instagram and whatnot makes us forget that our journeys are different. And there's no, like, set way. Like, just because you're married and having kids right now doesn't mean that's not coming for me. And I mean, I've even had my own struggle with that, right? But my journey is way different than yours. Where I'm at is way different. How I started is way different. But the thing is, I still have the same tools that you do. I have the ability to wake up every morning and to make conscious choices and towards the things that I want and work hard for them. And that's all I can do, right? Like, at the end of the day, I feel at peace knowing I'm trying my best to do whatever my goals are. You know what I mean? So
I love that. And I think you hit on something that's very important. Well, one, honesty comes to my mind again, because you're saying, how do I feel, right, is true, right? Like, when I look at myself in the mirror, do I feel good about myself? Or when I lay my head down at night, and that could be about the actions that I took today. Did I put my best foot forward? So Tracy may not be struggling with weight, but how about anger? How about attitude? How about greed? How about, all the frustrations that anybody else can have? If at the end of the day I can, again, put my head on the pillow and say, man, I feel pretty good about what I did today, and build on that, then I'm on a successful journey. But if I don't, if I lay there and think, man, I can't believe I said that, I can't believe I did that, then that's something I have to investigate. And maybe I can't believe I put that in my body. Right? For you, you're going, man, I did it again. Yeah. And the fact is that we can close our eyes, wake up tomorrow, and take another step towards the person that we want to be. Right? We get to do that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's note taking, right? Like, I'll be very transparent. Yesterday, did not have a great day. Definitely hit a binge, and something I'm making a video about. I want to be very transparent with people as this journey, but at first I wanted to sit and, like, sulk in the shame of like hitting the binge, but now it's more of a lesson for me to, like, take note of the things that led up to that binge, and when I'm in that situation, what can I do now to avoid it, knowing what the results were last time, right? It's like, life is moving, right? If I'm sitting in shame over what happened yesterday, then I'm not moving with it. But if I can take my shortcoming, because again, this is with even with any addiction, it's definitely a roller coaster, right? It's not just like you recognize it, you work towards it, and you're good. That's just not what the reality is. But I think the reality is like, okay, shit, I flopped in this situation, in this circumstance. I can recognize that for me, this is a flop. But what can I do to like put myself in a better position for when these similar circumstances are happening and similar outside factors are happening? Like, what can I do to make sure that I don't fall into this hole again? And that's all you can do, right? You just reevaluate and readjust, and that's motion.
I love that. You talking about the self-awareness. Like, somebody doesn't tell you that you made bad choices. Jahnay says, hey, I didn't love what I did yesterday. Tell me some of the guidelines that you're doing. How often are you checking in? What's your process in that, where you say, hey, you told me, when we started here, like, I got to check in on myself. Oh. Like, what does that look like for you right now? How often is Jahnay checking in? What's that feel like?
I'll say constantly. I do like intentionally in the morning and the evenings. So in the mornings, I generally wake up at 5 o'clock, 5 to 6. It's really my self development hour, which includes like journaling, and that's where I give gratitude and affirmation, right, to myself to start the day. And then in the evening, it's more so of like, that's the time where I listened to this podcast a few years ago, and it really inspired me, where at night you take self-evaluation, right, for your day, your shortcomings, your victories, and you can do it in a way where you're not like downing yourself, right? You don't have to talk bad about yourself to like implement change, right? And that's what I try to do in the evenings is like, okay, these are some of the things that I went through today. These are some of the behaviors that maybe I didn't really like today. Like, what can I do to like be better tomorrow, right? Because it's me versus me. I'm only greater than myself today than I was tomorrow. That's the only competition that there is me today versus me yesterday. And also, like, when I mean all day, is like, when I'm like feeling a certain way, because the thing with like living with BPD is it's a personality and a mood disorder. And so I have to consciously be aware of like, hey, you're getting upset, or you're feeling this way, maybe you should sit down, chill. Like yesterday, I was like, today is not the day for me to try to be productive. I just need to take a nap. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to know like when to call it for yourself. So I feel like it's an everyday thing, but intentionally I do it in the morning and nighttime.
You also hit on something a little bit earlier that I think is imperative, and it's something that Let's Go Recovery lives in this space, is other human beings, human connection. We talk a lot about that somebody's been on that journey. You're not the first young lady to feel this way about yourself, that there's somebody that can come alongside you. What are you saying to the person that's saying, I'm fighting this battle alone, or I can do this? What are you saying them to get them out of that space that says you're safe, you can talk to somebody, there's somebody that understands? What do you have for them?
I would say you're not alone, right? You really aren't alone, as much as this world can make us feel like we are alone, and that it is okay. It is truly okay to like recognize where you feel like you fell short. It is okay. Sometimes I think it brings on so much shame that it's very hard for people. I think that's what the factor is of people wanting to change, is it brings on shame of acknowledging like where you're really at. And I can say that it will be a hurtful, painful journey. And I think as long as you go in with that expectation that it's not all flowers and whatnot, it is a very, very like painful journey of like having to dig through those things that got you in those situations. But it's okay. You're trying. And I think that there is a big percentage of the world that's not even doing that.
Right.
So as long as you get up every morning and you just try, even like, and it's not something that you do and you just switch day and night, right? So those tiny atomic habits. So it's like, what can you do today to change one thing that could make you feel either a little more physical, a little more healthy, right? Like now I'm doing something, the smallest thing, like every time I'm driving, I'm parking in the farthest spot right now, just so I can get those extra like little steps in. It's something that is where you start, right? It's not like you have to get up right now and go run a 5K. You don't even have to be prepped to like run that 5K, but you just do that little thing. You walk to the mailbox. You normally drive there, walk there today, okay? Like do something. something small, and those will build up into those bigger habits. But it's just being aware and wanting that will to change, I think.
Yeah, that willingness to change, that will, like you start there where, hey, I don't like something about myself. What are you willing to do about it? And that next thing is probably not going to be that fun.
Absolutely.
So you're not going to go like, oh, this is so great. Like I put down, for me, I put down drugs and alcohol, and like the next day it wasn't like, oh, this is a great idea. No, there's like, hey man, I've reached for this substance for, a quarter century in my case. And like, what do I do now? Like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And, physically and mentally, I go, this is my safety net. This is my warm blanket, I like to call it. And all of a sudden it's not there. I'm scared. I'm afraid. I don't know what to do. You're saying to me, just put one foot in front of the other. Like, you don't have to make this even lifelong commitment. Just what are you going to do today?
Literally.
Like, what are you going to do right? And even break that down less. What am I going to do this hour? And if I'm on a weight loss journey, what am I going to do this hour that burns some calories?
Yeah.
Or puts my mind, I'm in a depression space. How do I get out of depression? Right? And you talked about gratitude. The easiest way to break out of depression is be grateful. Hit on that a little bit.
Grateful. Just because like when you start like identifying, because I'm telling you that the mental health the transformation that I've gone through in 11 months with my mental health has been the most 360 in the best way. And for me, it took like, especially after losing everything, right? Like, how can I be grateful after losing everything? And it really it helped me stay like take note of the things that I am blessed with, right? Like I had my dog, I gained a family and whatnot. So I think it really brings to sight like what you have. And even the gratitude is one thing, but in this journey, like viewing frequently my goals is the other thing, the other side of it, right? That helps. It's like, okay, well, I'm grateful for all these things and it keeps me like present and grounded in the moment. But what keeps me going is like reviewing those goals that I aspire to get to, as long as I do those small little actions, right? It doesn't matter when. It can be frustrating when it's not in your timing, but it's still a movement forward, right? Like that's what I would say. Gratitude definitely grounds you, but reviewing those goals pushes you a little further.
I love that.
Thank you.
You're using a lot of that stuff in your music, and I've played a little bit of your albums, or I don't know if it's all one album, but I've played some different music, and I've heard it. I want to talk a little bit about that. We're going to put some links on all of our social medias, and I'm encouraging our guests to check it out, because again, the authenticity, the rawness, the truth behind what you're saying is going to impact and influence somebody else's life. I 100% know that, right? Like I know that somebody's listening to something you've written and recorded and saying, I needed to hear that. Tell me a little bit about your music. What's going on? Let's get to the softer side of how you're doing and get me to where, I understand you a little bit better.
Okay. Right now, like, I'm in my pop girl era. So I'm doing a little pop hip hop. I have my song called Fat coming out. Well, it came out this last month. And that is just an upbeat, like, movement on, love yourself right now. Like, what people, especially like with fat people, I think sometimes want to use that as an insult. And it's like, no, baby, you're not insulting me. Like, I'm PHAT in that sense. Like, I'm fat and I'm cool and I'm digging it and whatnot. But I think it's an opener and a conversation piece to get to the surface layers of everything. As far as like what we've been talking about, this like whole first segment is like, love yourself. I don't care if you're 500 pounds. I don't care if you're 150 pounds. It's fat girls and friends.
Oh, that's great.
You know what I mean? But it all starts with like, I don't think that you can really hit a journey like this without self-love, right? Like it takes self-love to like be like accountable, hold yourself accountable. It takes self-love to be able to like see where you're falling short. Like I feel like people, and this is what I feel in my music, I feel like people like give people a hard time when they change a lot. And it's like, oh, this person is changing a lot and whatnot. But in my opinion, I think the smartest people are the ones that are constantly like changing their opinions and developing and whatnot, because they're not like stuck on like this one like thought process, right? No, they're taking in this information and they're rolling with it. And so I'm in this like fun era. I have like Fat, but the album or EP that you're talking about was Break the Curse, which really, really the main purpose of that was like doing what you need to do to like identify what your generational curses are, such as like finances or trauma and whatnot. And every family has them, right? Every family has things that have been passed down that I think it's every generation's responsibility. Your parent will always be like, I raised you, I want you to be better than me, right? Like, well, let's be better than them. Like, not out of spite. It doesn't have to be out of spite. It can be just like, look, I want these things for my family and my legacy, and these are the things that I'm going to express that I need to like overcome and break through. And it's an invitation for you to like ask your family like what's up, you know. There's this like, when I was doing the research for Break the Curse in my message, it was in a very simplest like form of how generational curses can affect us. It was like me, Sally, and Sue had this recipe, and for some reason even though we had a pan X, Y, and Z this size, we always like made the recipe with this like, it's supposed to be round but it's square, right? And they went back and found out like this is like a 4 or 5 generational like old recipe. And what happened is even though they're presently were making it this way, back in the past the reason why it wasn't circle is because they didn't have enough money for a circle pot like pan. They only had one for the square. And so it just shows like how little things pass down off of like situational things, right? Like this became this way because of your finances back then, right? So imagine how many habits, how many belief systems and whatnots and thoughts and processes that you have in your own family that have passed on that might not be the best and the most ideal. And so that's what that whole era was just, let's get to the nitty gritty. Let's talk to our fams. Let's figure out what we need to do as like the generational like leaders right now to like make impact long term. Because legacy for me is like when people stop talking about you, that's like when legacy stops, right? Like, but when people are continuing to talk about you and your impact, it continues and lives on. And so that's what Break the Curse is all about.
I love that. That's so good. It was for me personally, and I'll be real. I didn't realize some of the hurts. So I'm an abandoned kid. Parents left me when I was young, and I didn't realize the hurt of that until I got sober, and didn't even know it. Didn't even know I was thinking about it. And then I went back and I had held some angers that again I may not have ever spoken about, but when I unpacked them and realized, holy cow, like I've been performing for 45 years to get people to like me just so my dad will come pick me back up. Yeah. And there's some like deep stuff there that people aren't even recognizing it just ingrained in them. And I held my father in a space like for a while, even when I found it out, like that I'm going to say resentment, right? But then I did some unpacking and found out that like what was his relationship with his father? Guess what? His father left. His father left. And his father's father left, right? And so I'm putting myself in a position to where like I'm holding in something against you that's generational. You don't know any better. Like I didn't know the circumstances around both my mom's pregnancy or what's going on economically or socially, whatever, right? Sure. And like you go, wait a minute, I'm holding something against you that you really did the very best you could. And when I said that honestly for the first time, I felt like I lost 300 pounds, right? Yeah. Like I go, dang, right? Like, wait a minute. I've been carrying that around, towards my brother who went with my father. Like, I'm like, I don't feel a certain way. And somebody goes, okay, let's sit in that for a second.
Wow.
And then you go, wait a minute, I do. Like, why'd you pick him? He's a 2-year-old kid. Like, and I'm a 6-year-old boy. Like, there's no difference, right? He didn't choose. But he could handle maybe a 2.5-year-old better than a 6-month-old. Yeah. Right? And so now I start carrying on these beliefs because of what somebody said about me. Wow. And I had a great show with Tough Love Brooke was a gal on my show. I don't know if you saw it, but Tough Love Brooke talked about the fact that we are not the sum of everything somebody said about us. Oh, sure. Right? Like we're not this history, right? And that can be weight, color, that can be economics, position you came from. That can be so many things that we start telling ourselves, Like, you know, my first name's Tracy, so I've had to live with that, right? Like you got a girl's name, you know what I mean? When I start getting in that and go like, man, how do I feel about that? You know what I mean? How do I feel about where I come from or my people, whatever that is? And I start kind of holding and harboring that. There's where pain starts. But it starts way back then. And if I'm willing to go down and discover some of that, there's some beauty. I realized, like, my name, I'm fine with my name. Like today, right? Like today, I got no problem with my name. 8-year-old Tracy was ready to fight somebody. I remember Billy Peacock. He caught one. He caught one on the nose when I was about in second grade because I was like, yeah, call me Tracy one more time, see what happens. But you're like, that's crazy how I can feel, something can make me feel a certain way.
Oh, for sure.
Tell me about this new stuff. Like, what's making you feel good now? Like, I know you're doing the music, but what other stuff's making you feel good about you?
Honestly, it's indirectly about me, but I have been able to find, I haven't had the best like relationship with my family in the past, and I've been able to find a very, very supporting family like that I've been pretty much adopted into, and for me that's super impactful because like with living with BPD, it's very hard to know if relationships are authentic or whatnot. And also it can be very like chaotic sometimes. And I feel like the missing piece for me was an abundance of love that was able to help me in that particular battle. And it's crazy like how much my mental has changed just by being in an environment full of so much love and support. And so that's my biggest highlight right now, right? It's like I'm in this environment where I feel safe to be myself. I feel safe to like even explore these types of things, right? Because that's another like multifaceted portion of like healing, right? Or do you even feel safe to be in a position to heal? And so that's my highlight right now. That's the most positive thing that I have going on. I feel so happy that I'm in a position where I have people that really love me, like showing up for me and showing up for the shows and showing out. Like my adopted mom, she's in the gym stopping people like, hey, that came out. Like, while I'm like, Donnell, they're working out. Like, she's so proud of what I have going on. And I think that's very impactful for why I'm in this like fun era too. It's like, you know, I've kind of laid down what I needed to lay down as far as my own personal healing. And now, like, I'm going to find a cute, fun way to connect, right? I have this song hopefully coming out by fall called and it's talking about like the want and need of to be like with someone, but it's like I'm not even trying to like I just want to cuddle like and chill, you know what I mean? Like it's like connecting with people in a different way, right? So that's what I'm really excited for, is just the pivotal movement of like what love can really do for someone in their life, right? I'm not constantly like in distress every week because I've been able to feel so safe to like dive into deliver these issues. Like it's just amazing.
Wow, love. I mean, that's the warm blanket we're really looking for when it comes down to it. Then the substances aren't going to provide it. I don't know what your go-to was. You mentioned McDonald's. Like McDonald's isn't going to provide it.
McDonald's, psychedelics, like
right, whatever, right? You're a moraholic probably, right?
Yeah,
or allaholic. That's what some people call
all
it.
or nothing kind of mindset, and it's easier for me to like feel like, you know what, I don't want to disappoint not only myself, but I have like a support system like really rooting for me, and it's like I don't want to like disrespect the blessings that have been placed upon me by like not doing the best I can, because I don't want to say like it's as easy again, it's like just stopping, right? But as long as I'm doing the best that I can each day to like work on these things and like really dig and not like I don't want to say like enable myself, right? Like those are the things that make me feel good and make me feel happy. And so, yeah, we're just very excited.
Well, I'm going to tell you that your joy radiates. I couldn't wait, obviously, like I said, to have you on the show because I think our viewership is going to appreciate it. Like I said, we're going to tag you on all our social media. We're going to encourage people to go out, find your music, and we're going to make it as easily as possible for them to do that. And for our audience, I want to encourage you today to seek love. Find people that will care about you in the way that you deserve to be cared about, and stop believing the lies in your life. You are powerful, and I'm proud of everything you're doing to heal on this journey. Thanks for joining us.
I hope you heard something today that gets you to take one small step into the version of the person that you want to be. For more content like this, subscribe to our channel below, or you can go on letsgorecovery.org. Until next time,